It started this morning. Welcome in. Welcome to November's Homeless Planning Council meeting. And we have some things to present today and just really looking forward to what's happening in the community. And for my welcome, I do have something prepared. So as first ever chair with lived experience of homelessness for the Nashville, Davidson County HUD Continuum of Care, Homeless Planning Council, and duly the chair of the Lived Experience Consumer Advisory Board, I'm honored to welcome you all to our November meeting. And my chair tagline used to capture this year is transparency and no harm. It embodies our commitment to transforming narratives and enhancing our crisis response to homelessness through peer-to-peer expertise and deployment. We strive to ensure that every step we take is transparent and rooted in the principle of doing no harm to all houseless humans or most recently affected by homelessness. Despite facing delays in the ways to compensate us in the work, largely unfortunately due to bureaucratic hurdles, we have remained steadfast and dedicated. Our collaborative efforts are nothing short of stellar, even though they often go unnoticed in the background. Together, we are creating a future where those with lived experiences lead the charge in crafting solutions that are empathetic, informed, and impactful. The HUD Exchange resource on people with lived experience and expertise of homelessness and data decision-making highlights the importance of including those with lived experience in data projects and decision-making processes. So the HUD Persons with Lived Experience and Expertise Toolkit offers suggestions on how to partner and on data projects, ensuring that our efforts are inclusive and effective. It highly emphasizes the need for fair compensation and training for those involved, just as advised by Cloudburst to Nashville, Davidson County, HPC and CLC as a whole. All your county-wide support and partnerships are vital as we continue to champion the voices of those who have experienced homelessness and work tirelessly to end it. Let's keep pushing forward with transparency and no harm to create lasting change in Nashville, Davidson County. We all belong. So that's my welcome to you all for this Homeless Planning Council meeting. And we're gonna go forth to the attendance and to mention conflicts of interest along the way. So myself, I am present and no conflicts. Stephen Handy, Deirdre Nicole, Childress, and Liz Mallard.
Present, no conflict.
Alex Smith. Jamie Villegas, I know is out sick. I did see that.
You may want to ask people to hit their mic because it's recorded. So.
Oh, okay. Yes, when you are answering about your presence, please make sure your mic is on. But we got Miss Liz present. Dr. Exadria Inslee.
Present, no conflict.
Thank you. India Panjagra, she let us know she's not going to be here as well. Drew Freeman.
Present, no conflict.
Okay. Miss Diana Allen Robb.
Present, no conflict.
Michelle Souther.
Present, no conflict.
Andrea Hancock.
Present, no conflict.
Meredith McLeod Whalen. Okay. David Lango Martin just walked through the door. So I'll say his present for him. I don't know if it's any conflicts. Yes. Okay. Does have a conflict. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to put you on the spot. And Jordan Huffman, Councilwoman Courtney Johnson.
Present, no conflict.
John Rutherford. Okay, and Rico X. Adam Hansen. I don't see. Ashley Horton, Lizzie Goddard, Laura Ward,
Present, no conflict.
okay, Angie Lawless,
Present, no conflict.
welcome to you,
Thank you.
Ms. Jaha Martin, and we do have our non-voting advisors, April Calvin, Susie told me, I see her out there in the audience, and that's it as far as our attendance goes. Remembrance, the names of the people that have, lost their lives during homelessness. Just a second, sorry. I have a list. There it is. Thank you, April Calvin saved me because I buried my paper, of course. But, and if we could just take a moment of silence after this, it is such a real thing that literally last night, just so happened someone donated a sleeping bag to me and I didn't know who it belonged to. And after leaving, I visited one person in the hospital that needs really respite care. And after visiting that person, and he's without a home as well, but I found this woman, she was outside asking kind of for food and drink from people, and people were being really mean to her. And so she asked me specifically if I had a blanket, and I'm like, by gosh, really, I have a blanket in here that people, you know, gave to me to give to someone. It was washed, it was taken care of, it was a very nice sleeping bag. So just to be able to bless that woman, it almost made me cry because she would be warm for the night. I could feel it getting colder. She had on flip-flops. So it is such a real thing, this list here that I'm about to read. And exactly with my welcome, the work that we do is to prevent these deaths. And I want to see this list disappear is really, at the end of the day, what I believe everybody's goal is around this table. So Charles Williams, Francisco Gutierrez Villela, Linda Oliver, Kenneth Bunyard, Ryan Ford, Billy Adams, Tim W. Moore, Christopher Owen, Francis Craner, Wilbon O'Neill Claybrooks, Stanley Cowboy Chase, he sounded like he was rambunctious, Rodney Hayes, Stacy Michelle Kennedy, Kiana Catano, I don't want to mess up her last name, Jarrett J. Kleinart. And if we could take a moment of silence for those lives that were lost. Thank you all for that. And next is the October 2024 minutes review. I hope that you all have got to look at it beforehand. If not, if you could take a look through there. I've already reviewed it. I don't see any updates from the last meeting that need to be attention. If anyone else might have anything, please do let us know. And you can let Ms. Raquel know as well if you find anything that needs to be added. But otherwise, I'm going to go ahead to updates. Office of Homeless Services Director's Report, Ms. April Calvin.
Can I share your mic? I'm a little bit stuffy, so I won't talk long. Susie smiling. So, cold weather shelter. I want to talk a little bit about that. We are entering into a dangerous season for our unhoused population, and this year will be the first year that OHS is operating the cold weather shelter. For the last 10 years, Metro Social Services, under the direction of Director Renee Pratt, operated the cold weather shelter. And so our new little baby engine that could, our little office, is going to be operating it today, or this season. We have, ordered all the supplies. We're ready to go. We've just been thankful that the weather has been 70 and 80 and 60s at night and 50s at night. So as we are prepared and ready, we have been thankful for the weather. So in previous years, it was 40 nights of sheltering. For the 2 previous years consecutively, there was 40 nights of sheltering. Average amount of people that would attend shelter per night was about 222. And cold weather shelter operates when it's an overflow shelter, so just like to make sure we talk about that. It operates when the temperatures hit 32 degrees for 3 consecutive hours, and it is truly meant to be an overflow shelter, meaning that temperatures are dangerously below freezing, and we are aware that some people may not go to some of the shelters that are currently open, or the capacity, they may be at max capacity. So that's when Metro will authorize the cold weather shelter to open. There is a new process that we have implemented. One is utilizing our HMIS system, and we're excited for that. We have scanners, but we'll be able to scan people in, and hopefully the lines intake process will go a lot faster. Utilizing HMIS and coordinated entry for the first time to the full extent that it should be utilized while operating shelter. And then also the digital platform in the way that people can receive text alerts. So for you all on the committee, for our public, also for people experiencing homelessness, unsheltered homelessness, it's really good to utilize the link that's in this newsletter. It's called the Metro Means System. And if you would, there's a text alert, OHS alert to 888-777, and that's the new Metro Means system. In the past, we've used Rain Out, which has been provided to us by Room in the Inn. We've been excited to partner with them on that, and it's been a costly expense, and this is a tool that Metro has for free. But it's in the newsletter, and we'll send it out through the Constant Contact for the COC as well. So any service providers that are helping individuals get the free phones, once you provide them with the phones, I would urge you to go ahead and text this number in so that no matter where they'll receive these text alerts as well. Also want to talk a little bit about I know we last month talked a little bit about Old Tent City and the structures that were in the encampment that were deemed by codes and NDOT and TDOT to be uninhabitable and unsafe. They have been successfully removed without incident. There's a total of 10 structures that were removed. 6 on October 15th and 4 on October 25th. So 2 separate dates. They were well informed. They received 30 to 45 days of notice and partnered with a local nonprofit to help with getting them some of the items that they needed in order to relocate. So that was without incident. I know there was some confusion on if the entire camp was being closed or if it was just those structures. So just wanted to make sure that everyone's clear. It was just the 10 structures in that location. There's conversation right now, early conversations. I know, you guys have noticed things on the news as it relates to the pods that was purchased through the health department. 2021, 2019, I believe. And so there's a task force that's working on the viability of the utilizing those pods and locations, how to RFP it out. There's more information to come. Just wanted to let you all know early on that we are looking into that. And there's a task force that's been formed. Let's talk a little bit about the $50 million. You all should have this package and or will receive it in Constant Contact as well. The chart that I really monitor the most is the total spend down. These funds were awarded in 2022, and we have until mid-2026 to utilize them. So on page 20, there's a chart that shows the spend down of that. We have about $13 million that we are still operating with that will go to mid-2026. Real soon, you'll see an RFP that will be released for capacity building as it relates to the Roadway Inn hotel conversion or any other interim gap housing opportunities. So I do want to address that the Salvation Army has the funds are reimbursable funds, but they have withdrawn themselves from utilizing the $1.9 million. And so for the Roadway Inn Hotel, and so there's an RFP that will be out for agencies to apply to utilize those funds. And last thing I want to address is a little bit about CAB. When we revitalized CAB, we went through a process of hiring, doing an MOU with National Alliance to End Homelessness, NAEH. We're talking a lot of acronyms here, but I know we have new people here, so I want to make sure to spell some of that out. And Albert Townsend is the director of lived experience, and we've worked closely with him throughout our CAB experience and trying to grow our CAB. There were some recommendations to we moved CAB to be closer to the contributor where people were receiving their street vendor paper operations, where they were receiving their paper. And I think that we were really, and we worked greatly with MDHA on being able to make reimbursements and paying gift cards for that level of service. The contributor has been great. It's helped us to get new people that we maybe did not know or were not aware of the work that was going on in the COC. And so now we're working with our National Alliance to End Homelessness on coming up with the process to train, educate, orientate individuals with lived experience so that when they show up at tables with service providers or other professionals, they understand the language, they know the acronyms, they're well informed, and so that's where we're at in the process. I know that our CAB chair and our HPC chair is Kenitha Patterson, and she's probably getting a lot of pressure from some other CAB members in order to be deployed across the COC into different committees now, but we're being very intentional on utilizing Albert's expertise on how to grow that CAB intentionally and how to deploy those individuals with the education and the knowledge that they'll need in order to be successful on those committees.
All righty, thank you, Miss April. And we're gonna go to Miss Allison Cantway, who is gonna speak to us about COC bills application and anything else regarding collaborative applicants report.
I was very worried about pushing the wrong button. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Allison Cantway, and I want to give an update on the collaborative applicant. The update on the role of the collaborative applicant is as it's been. So a year ago, the COC voted to move the collaborative applicant to the Office of Homeless Services. We are currently functioning essentially as the collaborative applicant. We are still waiting for HUD to give the final stamp of approval. They are well aware of the change. We're just waiting for the paperwork to go through, and we're gently prodding them along the way to speed that up. Very good news, very big news is that we successfully submitted this year's COC application. So thank you to everyone who helped. This was our first year playing such an active role. We received more local applications than I think ever we have before, from more agencies than we ever have before. So I think we have a really strong pool of applicants, which is wonderful. I know I've said it about 1,000 times, but I just want to thank again Susie Tolmie, who has been super wonderful throughout this process, has been just a deep well of knowledge and wisdom, and we called upon her a lot. And she still, since MDHA is still technically the collaborative applicant, she's still pressed submit. So thank you to everybody for all of your good work on that. I do have an update on another NOFO that was released, which was the YHDP NOFO, that stands for the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program. We were told this year that we were allowed to apply again. That's never really been allowed by HUD in the past. We received YHDP funding several years ago, but HUD has never allowed those communities to reapply. This year they did. And we have learned, unfortunately, that we were not chosen to receive the additional fund. They decided to only choose one community that reapplied. I believe that there were 10 or 12 that were eligible, and HUD only chose one. I do want to thank all of the people who were very instrumental in helping with that process, though. There was a lot of great work. I think one of the wonderful things that's come out of this is that we have really revitalized and re-energized our Youth Action Board. And so I think that's going to be a really long sustaining impact of that effort. And then lastly, COC Builds. So that is our third NOFO. The COC Builds NOFO is a special one-time NOFO that they dropped. It is really based on development and construction of new units. HUD only allows one application from each COC to be sent to them for this particular NOFO. So unlike the big COC NOFO where we sent, 15 applications, we can only submit one. So we held a local competition. 3 agencies submitted applications, and the Performance Evaluation Committee evaluated all 3 and chose the one application that we are going to submit, and that application was submitted by Park Center. So we are currently working with Park Center to get that application sent in. Luckily, it is certainly not as involved as the big COC NOFO is, and really all of the questions in the application we used in the local competition, which is great. So all we have to really do is just kind of further refine any of the wording in that. That is due next week, and so thank you to Park Center and again to Susie, who we've been working with MDHA as well to make sure that that is submitted. That's the word on our 3 NOFOs. Does anybody have any questions?
Can you just talk a little bit about what the implications are of the YHDP proposal not being refunded in this opportunity?
Sure. So YHDP is, that program is really designating different COCs and communities as youth homelessness demonstration programs. We received that funding originally in 2018, somewhere around there, 2019. So we were one of the very first communities to be designated as YHDP. I believe we were in the second round. And so really what HUD has done is every year they've just added more and more communities to that. And like I said, this was the first year that they said, okay, some of these communities that are already YHDP communities, you can apply for additional funding. This has no impact on the original funding that we got in round 2. So we will continue to get that. And in fact, the HUD announced this year that the COC YHDP projects did not need to be ranked or scored. They would essentially more or less be automatically renewed. And so I believe that that's going to continue to be the case. So we will still receive those YHDP funds that we've always received. The current grant recipient for that is the Oasis Center. Any other questions?
Thank you, Allison. So next is going to be on the agenda, Continuum of Care Report by Ms. Raquel.
Hi, everyone. You have before you an overview of what each committee is working on, so I'm not going to go into every single committee, but I'm happy to answer questions. 2 of our committees will actually be sharing more information in the new business section today, and so we will be talking about proposed changes to the HMIS Policies and Procedures Manual, as well as the Outdoor Homelessness Strategy, so we'll revisit those in a minute. A couple other things just to flag is that the Nominating and Membership Committee met for the first time in a very long time and is very excited to strengthen engagement efforts both in our general membership meetings as well as recruiting new organizations and things of that nature. And so if you know organizations who are not yet involved or would like to plug in more, feel free to either come to those committee meetings or connect with me. HPC member Liz Mallard is really embedding herself in that committee and is hoping to take on more of a leadership role. And so that's going to be very exciting. A couple other things to flag as the point in time count is taking place in January of 2025. We are still looking for volunteers. And so if you or anyone in your organization is interested in volunteering for the point in time count, learning more about what this point in time count is, feel free to reach out to me and I'll get you connected and get you the survey to be able to indicate that you're interested. And I think I had one other update. Oh, yeah. So our Equity and Diversity Committee met a week ago, and they're working on multiple different initiatives, hoping to do a training in the spring related to equity and diversity specifically, and provide support to some of our organizations who have disparities in their data or would like to strengthen their strategies. And then one other thing is that we are revisiting the anti-discrimination policy. A draft version was produced about a year ago and went out for public comment, but then it didn't ever really come to fruition. And so the committee is revisiting that draft, assessing if it is strong enough to move forward with or if anything needs to be changed. So be on the lookout because that anti-discrimination policy will come to the Homelessness Planning Council for final approval in the coming months. Any questions? Okay.
No, ma'am. Thank you, Raquel. And for the new business, we have revisions to. Oh, sorry. I don't know how I skipped HMIS. I apologize. It was not intentional. I went straight past them to Raquel. But Homeless Management Information Systems report. And if you could let us know your name, because you're not Hannah.
I am not Hannah. I am not Hannah, unfortunately. My name is Megan. I'm also on our HMIS team. I'm one of Hannah's data minions. So there are a few of us here. So we are going to talk about our October data report. This is the same report that Hannah normally talks about, so you all are familiar with it. For the month of October 2024, 3,290 people experienced homelessness in Nashville. That was made up of 270 families and 2,475 adult-only households. That just means individuals in HMIS speak. When we move down, about halfway down the page, we can look at our highlights. This is 8% of those people in October were veterans. That is an increase from last month. 48% of those people experienced chronic homelessness, and 8% of those people were youth age 18 to 24. The bottom of the page, we break down by race and by gender who's experiencing homelessness. In October, 52% of people experiencing homelessness were Black, and 39% of those folks were white. We can also see that 57% of the people experiencing homelessness in October were men, while 42% of those people were women. If we flip over to the back of the page, this is looking at who we housed in the month of October. We can see at the top that 184 people who were experiencing homelessness were housed, which is always something to celebrate. That was an increase from September, so that's exciting. Of those 184 people, 112 of them were households, meaning 28 families and 84 adult-only households, so individuals. Again, we can see our highlights in the middle of the page. 14% of the people we housed were veterans. 33% of the people housed were experiencing chronic homelessness. 9% of the people we housed were youth, age 18 to 24. And our average length of time from when they entered HMIS to when they exited to permanent housing was 117 days. The next graph you're going to see is how those people were housed by different destinations or supports. We did want to point out that we had a huge jump in the number of people housed with VASH vouchers. So those are those veteran vouchers that serve our vets. We had 17 households get housed in the month of October, which is fantastic. That's a huge shout out to the VA and our landlord engagement team, who's been working really closely with them to get those vouchers utilized. So that's exciting. The other highlights were rapid rehousing, which is always a hotspot for housing. And we had 17 people housed with no subsidy as well. So that was exciting. We can see about at the end of the page, the top agencies who house the most people. We always like to give a shout out. This month, it was Operation Stand Down, Salvation Army, and Safe Haven Family Shelter. So congrats to them for all their hard work. And then again, at the bottom of the page, we just break down by race and gender who was housed. We can see that in October, 57% of the people we housed were Black, while 32% of the people who were housed were white. And 56% of the people housed were men, while 45% of those housed were women. Does anybody have questions about the data?
Because I always have questions about the data, not Hannah, but Hannah's data
I'll do my
minion,
best.
as you say. I'm curious about the average length of time from data entry to actual housing. And my question is this, it seems like our COC applicants, as we're looking at those applications, we're looking at time to housing at 90 days or less. So this is closer to 4 months as opposed to 3 months. Can you talk a little bit just kind of about the data trend? Is it taking longer to get people into housing? Are we getting better on this metric over time? Do you have that information right now? And if you don't, can you get it to us?
We can absolutely get that to you. Yeah, that's not a hard one to get.
Awesome. Were there any more questions?
Yeah, I got a
Okay,
quick question
go
just
ahead.
about the data. Is it possible to start to break down some of that family number? Because I think when we see 270, it's hard to identify how many children are in that number.
Okay,
And I think that it could get washed away, the importance of that number.
okay,
Because 270 could be up to 500 children on the streets.
okay,
And I just want to make sure that they're represented in this somehow.
okay. So we think of that total number, you're curious to know how many are minors?
Right.
Okay,
Some families can be
okay.
2 units, 2 people, some
Right,
can be
right,
10.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
Okay, any other questions or comments on that section, HMIS? If none, moving along to the next item on the agenda, again, new business. We have revisions to HMIS policies and procedures manual and revisions to the outdoor homeless strategy. That was done by the shelter committee. They have a new name, the SWAP committee. I see HMIS committee is ready to speak upon the first item. And then we'll, would it open for discussion? Okay, it'll open for discussion, and then I know on both items, we want time for everyone sitting around this table here to be able to review what the revisions were, to be able to come back next month and vote on submitting them as approved, or, whatever the consensus is. So you all can go ahead. Thank you.
Morning. I'm Shannon Degnan. I'm the chair of the HMS Oversight and Data Committee. And Kelly's here because if you ask a single question, it's going to Kelly. So today we're here to talk to you about proposed changes that I'd like to recommend to you all to vote on next month for our HMIS Policies and Procedures Manual. This document guides the work of entering data to HMIS, and ultimately it's been a few years since we have updated that. So many of the changes that we made are just kind of bringing us up to date, some language changes that have evolved over the course of our work and things like that. So before I dive into kind of the high level changes that we're recommending, I wanted to talk a little bit about the process that we use to get here. So our wonderful HMIS team spent a lot of time going through that document really closely and looking at things that needed an update or things that felt like were missing that had come up over different time periods. They brought their recommendations to the HMIS and Data Oversight Committee, and we spent the last several months looking into each of their recommendations, discussing them, debating them. We spent some time researching things that we weren't sure about, and we also referred to HUD TA in a couple instances just to get some outside perspective. So, for the sake of time in the conversation, I feel like it doesn't make a lot of sense to tell you where we made just like minor grammar changes. I feel like oh, it just did that on its own. Hopefully it doesn't do that again, but let me know. Okay, so the first shift that we wanted to talk about is a shift sort of in the concept around overseeing HMIS users. The last version of this document was written when we were a much smaller community. We had 50 pretty stable users at all times. Now we have hundreds of sort of evolving, revolving users. And so we want to recommend that we are shifting the responsibility of oversight of these end users from the lead entity, the lead agency, to the participating agencies. So we just feel like that's more realistic, it's more possible, and ultimately they're the ones who know their staff more closely. So we think that makes sense. We think that's more manageable and realistic. And that is going to pertain to a lot of the other changes that we're recommending as well. And if anyone has questions as we go, feel free to stop me. Yeah. Oh, I thought it was my mic again. What's up?
Michelle, make sure you turn your mic on, sorry.
Sorry about that. As you're walking through, highlighting where the changes are you able to connect it to where that is in the document?
Yes, I'm sorry I didn't do that. So
okay.
there is also a document that you'll be able to access that is a list of these proposed changes with like the very fine details. But as I go, I will make sure to point out where in the bigger document they exist. So the first one that I just referred to is policy 3.5. On page 9. I won't know that, so thank you. Okay. So next up, this is probably the one we had the most discussion about. There's like a little bit of a shock value, but ultimately this is really good for the community and again makes data safety more possible to manage. So we are recommending, this is section 4, page 9. We're recommending a shift from language that previously said that all HMIS end users should have had a background check prior to receiving access to HMIS to new language that says HMIS access will not be granted to any prospective HMIS end user who is found to have entered a no contest or who has pled guilty to the following: identity theft and any stalking related felony crimes. So again, this kind of reflects the shift from OHS being responsible back to the agency. It also reflects the difference in how different agencies in our community onboard employees. Not everyone does background checks, and so again, just to bring us more up to date into, you know, kind of the spectrum in our community, we felt like that was more in line with that. I also want to note we removed one of the offenses in line with HUD changing their recommendations over time. There was a third that was sexual offense related charges, and ultimately data does not show that that is relevant to this conversation. And so we, in line with that and other research, decided to take that out as well. I'm gonna just pause if there's any thoughts.
So we're no longer requiring a background check for users?
So we are putting the responsibility on agencies to make sure that no staff that they are granting access or asking us to grant access to has either of these two.
And how are they supposed to find that out?
Well, so that's what we're asking them to have a process to do that. And I don't know, do you have any more thoughts about that?
I was gonna say, while we had in the policies and procedures previously that a background check might be required, we have never background checked a single individual who has gained access to HMIS. That language was originally put into the policies and procedures based on HUD's proposed 2011 rule. HUD has since then vacated that rule and said it is no longer a requirement. They are not backing that statement anymore. So the discussion a lot was, can we really enforce this? Who then pays for it? Is it something that we, since we are not employing this individual, that we really have access to their criminal background? So we really pushed to kind of put that back on the agency, that the agency needs to know who it is that they are recommending.
So what's the accountability? Who are they accountable to? Say I am group ABC, whatever, and I am allowing access to HMIS. Who am I accountable to as the leadership of that organization to make sure that the people that I am onboarding, if there is no background check required, am I supposed to say, hey, Jim, have you ever been convicted? Or, I mean, like, are we trusting that? Like, there's got to be something else that protects, because this is very sensitive data that they have access to.
Yes, it is. And so if someone does have that charge, if there is a concern at any point in time, we do have written in there that we, towards the bottom of the paragraph under that we reserve the right to request a background check if we have concerns about someone. And then we also have the ability, as outlined in the policies, that if someone has been found to have a background that is unacceptable or to be in conflict with this, that there are repercussions for the agency and for the user.
And what are those repercussions?
Those repercussions depend on the level, but could be that they are no longer able to access HMIS, that there could be potentially, I mean, it just depends on what the individual has done or what the agency has done. Make sure that I am stating all of this correctly, because we have that.
Also, I just want to say again, like, although the language had historically said a background check was required, we're still working with agencies who don't do that in their onboarding process. We wanted to make that a reality. However, you know, the safety of data is still of the utmost importance. I mean, I had challenges with this conversation having worked on the HMIS team before. This is the section we referred to TA support for. Just a lot of communities do it a lot of different ways. This actually brings us closer to what common language in procedure manuals commonly say. Ultimately, the way I see this, it is still the responsibility of the entity to ensure that no one they are recommending has been convicted of either two crimes. However, we did also want to give the flexibility to not absolutely disregard, you know, a good and very important section of data where that's not happening. So we could definitely have more conversation about how to enforce and hold accountable these things without the specific background language. That's definitely something we want to continue to.
Yeah, I'd rather have a little bit more conversation around the accountability and enforcement of it, because you've got a ton of agencies, like you said, we have all the, you know, hundreds of users at this point, among multiple agencies, that different agencies have different levels of thought processes around this, and yet we still have to maintain some level of, you know, the privacy and being very intentional about who is able to access this data, but having some sort of maybe paper trail or something where we're saying, look, we're allowing access to Joe Smith, sorry to whoever, that's a fake person, sorry to Joe, you know, or we're allowing Joe Smith, there's just got to be something. This to me sounds a little weak.
And just for clarification, pages 6 and 7 is where we have written our policy of if there is a conflict, if there is anything that we are finding that has been done incorrect. This is kind of our policy for corrective action plans, terminations, anything like that.
Yeah, my problem with that is that it's reactive. And so at that point, something has already happened that we're having to react and punish. I would rather be much more proactive about preventing someone from accessing that, you know what I mean? I'm always about proactive versus reactive, and this is very reactive. And the policy change is making it more reactive than proactive.
Thank you for your feedback. Understood and heard, and I agree in a lot of ways. We spent a lot of time on this one, a lot of conversation, and everyone in the HMIS Oversight and Data Committee are people who represent leadership at agencies across the community. So we had a lot of conversation about this and ultimately landed in agreement that this actually brings us closer to being able to hold agencies accountable. We were working with language that absolutely didn't reflect reality. And so I understand that concern, and that is also our biggest concern. So we'll continue to work on that.
Okay, thank you. And I know we have a line going, so, Jamie was first, and then it's Andrea, and then Michelle, and then, Angie, sorry. And Deanna. Okay, that's fine. And, okay. And, just be mindful of the time, and then, there you go.
So I want to thank you again for the work that you've done, but I do want to echo the council members' concerns about being more reactive than proactive, especially when it comes to victims of domestic assault and sexual assault who are now homeless because of that thing, and the potential that somebody that they could be entering data for them on their behalf or have access to their data is now putting them now at risk. And I want us to be mindful of these kinds of things when we're creating the policy. I think it's much better to be safer to exclude somebody out of abundance of caution than have to react to a situation because we found out somebody happened to be let in that they probably shouldn't have been.
Thank you.
All right, I would like to say thank you guys for your diligence in updating these policies. I just have a question for, I know a lot of nonprofit agencies that may have access to this system employ individuals with lived experiences. And so I want to speak on behalf of those who didn't start off right, but may have corrected their life. And I know that some employers do a background check for like 7 years, 10 years. So if someone has committed one of these crimes, maybe 25 years ago, but they have turned their life around, now working self-sufficient, productive members of society, haven't committed any crime in the last 20 years. Would this still exclude that individual, or is there a recourse for someone who may have something on their record from years ago? Is there a recourse for them, like maybe something to substantiate, get letters of recommendations or something like that from their community?
So that's a great thought, and actually part of this conversation was born out of the awareness that many agencies do employ folks with lived experience who may have some of these things in their background. So reducing the list was to reflect kind of as far as we could possibly take it. Unfortunately, though, the research does say that anyone who has identity theft or stalking related felony crimes would be potentially likely to abuse data again in the future. And so that was like a line we just felt like we had to draw in the sand here. But yeah.
The next person up was Michelle.
Thank you. I have a couple questions. I think two of, what's the minute? Oh. Okay, we'll just see how that plays out. So, quick questions that you don't have to expand on. I can use the information to in next month, but and then a little bit of explanation. So, my first question is the data that you said you used to, look at risks and mitigate the risks of those criminal charges. Can you cite those, the data sources for that? Say that one more time. Yes. This, I don't think it's working.
We might have to pause. They're offline right now.
Raquel's working on it.
Oh.
You might want to try to get closer, because mine is making a sound, I guess.
Is that better? Oh,
There you go.
that's good.
Yeah.
Okay. The data sources. I was just asking about the data sources used to determine.
Yes, I think of them documented in notes that we took or minutes from meetings, and graded from the recognition found data. I'm sure we could pull that back up.
Yeah.
most of the kind of information we looked at was other communities' documentation and also leaning on the support of the HUD-DA in regards to this, but we can pull that up too. Okay, sorry.
It would be helpful to review. And then the other question was, is my memory sort of correct that the oversight agency received funding to support paying for criminal background checks? I don't believe that's the case. I don't think any of the criteria available. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And then, sorry, lastly, so if we're talking about barriers to employment, a agency did previously require an employee to pass background screen. It's gonna change that for them. Now you're limiting access um, to growth and financial development. So I'm just wondering, I don't know if it's a conversation, it is something to point out that now you have created a board policy, the policy creates a barrier for people trying to gain employment when potentially there's, another position they move into, but wanting to flag that, and also wondering, HR is my thing, but how, if I'm a owner of a business and now I have to complete background checks, what does that do to the HR infrastructure? Like, is that really disruptive to how I report or, that piece of it? Wondering what the burden on the organization is as a result of.
I mean, the conversation was more complex. We thought it was when we started talking about it in the committee space. That is part of the consideration of changing the language. I see the insecurity of the most vulnerable people in the community is still top priority. It took me a lot of conversation to turn my opinion around and lean towards this language because then I feel like concern. We weren't operating in reality. This at least gives us a starting point to work on, in my mind, proactively on making sure that the people with access are doing so responsibly and safely.
We're not requiring background checks.
Currently,
But we were before, we are not anymore.
you weren't requiring that. We were
We
suggesting.
were, but it wasn't happening, so they're taking that language out, right?
Yeah, there was no actual course to verify or to document. Yeah. I know that we've done so much.
Also, I think it's important to note that a lot of agencies that provide direct services to individuals.
Our IT person asked for us to pause for a second. He thought that it might reset itself. Unfortunately, he's going to need to manually reset it. So I don't want this conversation to get lost in the recording. And we're on time to take a minute. And one thing to know, I know Emily didn't know, but for those who are new, if you click the button twice in a row, for some reason this setup it resets itself, and so sometimes it'll, become normal again, but
taxes. So just as a background, I work at Vanderbilt. There are 40,000 employees that work at Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt doesn't require a background check upon employment. I think that may have changed, but I think they check for like DUIs. But so if I was going to move into a role that uses HMIS, and now, my employer is told they have to do a background check on me, maybe that's not part of their policy. Maybe they don't do that. And now, because my employer is not able to do this or, facilitate it, now I'm not able to access and, move into different roles or advancing in career. So it's not always about what comes back on the background screening. It's just, I think attention needs to be paid to how the implementation or requiring agencies to now do this. I think there's always crumbles that there's cookie crumbles from it. So just wanting to highlight that. So I'm sure you guys talk about that. I'm gonna just push this one time. I'm wondering, oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say thank you. It sounds like you guys have done a ton of work on this, but I first of all, new, but second of all, I always have a little bit of an issue when there's been something that isn't being followed. So to have it in their background checks when that hasn't been done, I think does warrant looking at one or the other. But is there any type of certification process or any kind of comfort that the agency would give us stating that they have vetted for these, identity theft and stalking related felony crimes?
I think that is the direction I would like to work on before our next meeting here, when you guys will be, I swear I pressed it once. It's blinking.
Same.
Okay. Maybe part of the process when someone is an agency is submitting a name is that there is some sort of verification process. Most agencies in our community, I think, do background checks. So I think this is null and void for most of the users, and that maybe there could be like a secondary something that the lead agency comes up with a couple agencies that don't, that would make us feel comfortable are vetting time they are accessing information.
I don't care if we have background checks personally. If we have them, that's great. I think that enforcing it will be a huge nightmare. Personally, I think it'd be really potentially challenging to facilitate well. We have 300 users now, and that's like a rotating 300. So this is not like a casual expense or process. And it's also, you're working with background checks with 50 participating agencies. So I don't know how you, we'll get back in there. Happy to do it.
And I just want to highlight just one thing, and I understand the challenges of that, and we kind of went through this with my agency. We decided to do them annually now because it is that important. Because it only takes one breach for it to lose complete confidence, and you will never get anybody to sign up for it ever again. So I think that is also at risk. So we have to balance the money with the people. And I always lean with the people when that is in question, right? So it seems like there's a need to find funding from Metro, since Metro is the most liable in this situation, to cover this, so it's not a burden on the agency, because we feel it's that important, and a breach of that is also that important.
Thanks for this conversation. There are more recommendations. I think it's clear we need to do some more work on this. So we will. We as a committee meet before you meet next. So next time we come, we'll come with some new ideas and maybe talk to April and team and Metro Legal about what we could possibly do to make this happen. Okay, moving on. So next this is very straightforward, I think. Section 4.2, this was basically just a gap in language. Previously, access to HMIS it hinges on your employment or volunteer status with an agency, and if you were to quit or be fired, your access to HMIS would be revoked as well. Lots of instances where people move around and they could gain access again through their new employer. Section or policy 4.5, this is new language. Basically with data safety and security and quality in mind, we feel like it's appropriate to say that by the time someone is being recommended for access, that they do have some basic computer skills. This has come up a few times where it's really impossible to walk someone through this kind of complex software when the basic computer skills aren't there as a baseline. So this is, again, something we're asking agencies to vet and make sure that the folks with access can use the software. That is policy 4.5. Okay, next is a policy addition 4.7. So license distribution has been a hot, what? 4. So license distribution has been a hot topic in the past, and proactively to make sure that we have a plan in place for if we were to run up against our max allotment of licenses. We're recommending adding some language that says basically that each project in HMIS at an agency level would have up to 3 licenses available, and that an agency has up to 12 total licenses available. There's also language.
Quick, just in case anyone is looking at it, I just caught that we apparently have 4.6. It is the second one on page 11, 4.6B, I guess now, that we're looking at. We will correct that, sorry.
So this is basically just a starting point for the lead entity to have conversations with onboarding new agencies. There's flexibility beyond that. Some agencies in our community enter a huge amount of data and need more than 12. And so this language does give flexibility to allow for more when necessary. But basically just gives them a foundation to start the conversation. Next, section 5, client rights. We basically, just page 14, just beefed this section up to include new technology that exists in the current day, including AI and things like social media. So basically, this is listing what is and isn't allowed once a person signs our release of information in terms of sharing data. So this is just an update to kind of bring us current day. Okay, previously, we also were missing language around disposal of like physical information that might exist upon, like collecting data for HMIS. This is section 6. So we simply are recommending the addition of language that talks about the disposal of hard copy information. Well, and not just hard copy, but computer information as well. Okay, and last but not least is section 9, data collection. This is a new policy 9.5. So over the last couple of years, the OHS has been working hard to make accessing the rescue missions data possible, and that is going to be possible through data import. Yay, that's so huge for our community. That's a new process and something that we didn't previously have any language for. And so basically this new policy just speaks to its existence. So we felt like the manual needed to speak to that. Phew, that's it. I just want to say again, I genuinely hear I'm not like a barrier to this conversation. It's just about making it like possible and practical, because again, and what you said is absolutely true. Just because we didn't do it, that's not a great thing either. We need it to be realistic. We need it to be achievable. So I think we can find a way to make that happen. Thank you so much. I did not expect to go the whole rest of the meeting. Sorry.
No problem at all. Thank you so much, Shanley. And we appreciate the conversation and all of you all as well for adding to that and what we need to be looking at. And it brought a better understanding for me to the document to have that conversation out. So we really appreciate your hard work and for getting this to us and the foundation of the work. So happy about the revamp. Now on the revisions to the outdoor homelessness strategy, I'm gonna kind of lean into Ms. Raquel, and she's gonna help us out with whatever we need to know regarding that.
Hi, folks. I know we're at time, so I'm going to do a brief introduction. I'm also not a member of the Shelter, Weather, Outreach, and Prevention Committee, so hopefully Chair Ryan Lampa can come to the next meeting. He was not available for this one and can share more information. The big thing that I want to point y'all towards is on page 24, actually. So this was, it's a 2-page document of feedback and recommendations related to the outdoor homelessness strategy that has been compiled over the last few months. So 2 committee members from the SWAP committee took it upon themselves. They divided up and they engaged with a range of stakeholders on the outdoor homelessness strategy, ranging from people who had lived through a camp closure, people who, like organizations who were on the ground, as well as the Office of Homeless Services staff, to kind of get an understanding of what has been going well over the last 2 years, as well as areas of improvement. So for context, for those of y'all who might be new, the outdoor homelessness strategy was adopted in 2022. The full existing plan from 2022 is on the committee's website under the SWAP committee. So if you need help finding it, let me know. I can also email it out. But over the last 2 years, there just have been ongoing discussion in this committee about potential areas of improvement, but it wasn't exactly clear what to focus on. And so the committee took about 3 months to collect information and produce this 2-page report of strengths as well as challenges and specific recommendations. One of the biggest themes was that they didn't find that the plan itself was a core pain point, but rather the implementation. And so they really focused on suggesting sections to kind of clarify what communication and coordination should look like for this type of plan. And you'll also notice that some of the sections in the original document have just been reorganized to kind of more clearly direct folks towards what it looks like to implement the plan. And so some of the sections were, pulling forward the introduction, purpose statement, goal, intentions, focusing on the front end on what it actually looks like to implement this plan, and then having a lot of additional resources, guidelines, and practices towards the back. And so not a ton has changed, but there are some specific sections that they really focused on in terms of outlining some definitions to more clearly understand what some of these key terms that we've been talking about are. Really clearly defining what assessment and prioritization looks like, and then having a clear timeline for planning and preparation, what each of those phases looks like, who's involved. And then starting on page 10 is the mobilization section that really goes over what the closure itself would look like and the steps that are involved. And so, yep, go ahead. Do you need a copy? Okay.
Ms. Raquel is gonna get the packets to everybody.
Okay. All right.
So Raquel is done. I'm gonna call up Ms. Charis from the Low Barrier Housing Collective for the story of progress while we review our outdoor homelessness strategy and kind of catch up on that. But we're gonna listen to the story of progress. We're going to adjourn thereafter and roll right into orientation. Thank you all.
Alrighty. Good morning, everyone. My name is Shara Sagaugian, Office of Homeless Services, Landlord Engagement Manager, and I want to share some information about one of our new affordable housing partners here in Nashville, Shelby House. Shelby House has, well, let me go back a little bit. Out of 102 GAP units that we have across the city that were financed through the Affordable Housing GAP loan or a GAP financing program through MDHA, they have 14 of our units there, 14 GAP units. These are zero barrier. They're set aside for those that are coming through coordinated entry. They're targeted for those that are 30% AMI or below, which is about $22,000 or less a year in annual income. Shelby House is located on South 4th. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the area, but they have a great view of the Cumberland River, the Titan Stadium, nice scenic view of the downtown skyline. Out of those 14 units, or all of our 14 units, have come with project-based vouchers, which means the assistance is attached to the door. This is groundbreaking for our community because we have a lot of unhoused populations or unhoused people that do not have income and do not have housing choice vouchers. So this is a big thing for us. There's no screening parameters. So when we say GAP units, there's no criminal background, no rental history checks, no credit checks. As long as they come through coordinated entry, they qualify. So we've successfully housed about 9 residents there. We have about 5 more to go. They come with aftercare and wraparound services along with residency. And Shelby House has also implemented a community engagement officer outside of the property manager. So any other things that arise during their residency, those things can be addressed. Any questions for me? I try to be as quick as possible. Yes.
Average length of time to get those 9 folks housed?
Oh, from the start of the application to the end? About 2 weeks. 3 weeks, worst case scenario. With this particular development, they have to go through 2 application processes. And I'll just try to breeze through it, but they have tax credits there, and they also have to access those project-based vouchers. So those are 2 different compliance parameters. MDHA has a process, which is the window they give us is about 45 days, but they try to give us a little bit more of a smaller time frame because at least of time constraints. And their tax credit process is about 10 business days. So anywhere from maybe 2 to 3 weeks, maybe, worst case scenario. And of course, just keep in mind, case managers have to work with their participants in shelters. They have to work with their schedules and getting documents filled out, proof of income, permanent documents, ID, social security card, birth certificate. So sometimes that takes a little bit of time. And if they have proof of income, to get that those documents in. Any other questions?
Thank you so very much for that, Sharice. That is indeed a story of progress. So we're going to go ahead and adjourn if there is no other business to address. And we're going to go right into orientation. And if Ms. Raquel can direct us on what that looks like, please. Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.